Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Transit Tangents. My name's Lewis.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Jerome.
And yes, we're very happy to be joined by Jerome today, who is part of the Baltimore Red Line project. This is part of our kind of Northeast Corridor trip. We've been in Boston, we've been in Philadelphia, and now we are here in Baltimore. Jerome was happy to help put together a little happy hour event for us last night, so we got to chat with a lot of local folks who are both transit advocates as well as folks working at the agency. So first off, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. We're very excited to be here.
Yeah, delighted to meet you all and share a little bit about what's happening in Baltimore.
Yeah, so I guess to kick us off, can you just give us the overview of what is the Baltimore Red Line project?
The Baltimore Red Line project is a revived east-west light rail, so to span 14 miles across the city and Baltimore County, kind of stretching in the west in Baltimore County from Woodlawn area, coming into the city through US Route 40, through downtown Central Business District, and then ultimately ending east at Johns Hopkins Bayview Hospital. And this really fills in a critical east-west gap. We have buses that run in that corridor today that are among our highest ridership routes. And this was always intended to, for higher capacity premium transit. And so this will really help fill that need, allow us to move more people more efficiently, and really fill in some of the critical, giving people critical access to opportunity in parts of West Baltimore and some of our job centers that are located elsewhere.
I think the key word there was it's a revived plan. Can you give us a little bit of the history of the Red Line and what you mean by revived plan?
Yeah, so this project has a history. The modern incarnation goes back to 2002 with the Baltimore Regional Rail Plan. This was a plan that was put out identifying existing and potential rail corridors, looking at a combination of light rail and potential heavy rail investment. And in that plan, there was an east-west line that was given the color red, and that's where the color comes from. And really, though, this goes back all the way to the streetcar era. If you look at our last streetcar line in Baltimore to run was the Route 8, which actually went from West Baltimore and then went north into Towson, one of our satellite cities, and it was among the highest ridership lines. And then after that, in the 1960s, planners in Baltimore began to plan a sort of modern Great Society metro system, similar to what we see in DC, Atlanta, and the Bay Area. That planning happened, but unfortunately the system did not come to fruition, but it was always intended to have an east-west line. We did build one line, a 15-mile heavy rail metro. And so the 2002 plan, once again, kind of studied some corridors. And if you look at the 1960s metro plan and the 2002 rail plan, you'll see a lot of similarities. And so the 2002 plan comes out, and one of the priority recommendations from that plan is this east-west corridor, which became the Red Line. So this project moved forward through the process of, working with our federal partners at the Federal Transit Administration, securing local funding, and then ultimately we did win federal funding. And the project was pretty much ready to start construction in 2015. Unfortunately, previous governor administration decided to cancel the project. And so, many people thought maybe the project was dead, but the dream of the Red Line was never really dead. That need was always there. So in 2023, now Governor Westmore of Maryland decided to resurrect the project. And so that brings us to where we are today with the revived East-West Red Line light rail.
Oftentimes, things like this can be frustrating because, if it did end up in 2015, everything moves forward. We very well could be almost ready this trip could be, we're coming to ride the Red Line almost at this point. So, but very good news to see it coming back. Right now, you all are in the phase where you're sort of trying to decide exactly where this thing will run. So there's 3 different proposed alternatives. Can you kind of walk us through the stage that you're in now and kind of the processes that you're going through in terms of how to choose exactly which alignment this route will take?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. We're in what we call the alternative analysis phase of our 3 different alternatives. So alternative 1 closely mimics the 2015 project. It includes 2 tunnels, one sort of mile-long tunnel with no stations on the western edge of Baltimore City, and then a sort of 4-mile tunnel under downtown with 5 underground stations and a direct connection to our existing metro. And then the 2 other alternatives, alternative 2A and 2B, are fully surface, and while they all follow the same general corridor, there are some differences. Obviously, the tunneling part is risky and the most expensive and would take the most time, but it does offer, the most reliable and fastest service.
Right.
However, the surface alternatives add some advantages as well. One difference between 2015 and now is the city of Baltimore adopted a complete streets law, which allows us to prioritize pedestrians, cyclists, transit on the surface level and kind of reimagine our streets as places that are really hospitable to humans. So for those two surface alternatives, it does offer the ability to potentially reimagine some of our streets, particularly in downtown and other parts of the city, to make them human-friendly and really human-centered. So, there's a lot of factors. Cost is one. Time to construct is another. The two surface alternatives could be built faster and cheaper. There is this idea of sometimes the transit being on the surface it's visible. That is, one aspect of riding. I'm sure we've all ridden systems in different cities. I think of like the Chicago L, right? Where it is different when you can kind of see what you're going by versus when you're underground. The surface alternatives do give us the opportunity to add in maybe a few more stations that we wouldn't have on the underground just due to the expense. There's trade-offs about speed, reliability, but also access could be increased. Really it's looking at the factors of cost, time to build, access, and then there's the reality of our financial reality, right? We are going to do our best to continue working with our partners on the federal level, but also locally at the city, county, and state. We're going to need to come up with our share of the money to finance the project as well.
Right. And for the context too, for folks not as familiar with Baltimore, you mentioned that this would have a transfer station with the existing metro. So presently you all have one kind of metro subway line, and then there is also a light rail here as well. So would this intersect with the light rail as well, I guess?
Yes. Yep. So all three alternatives that we're studying would directly intersect with our existing 30-mile north-south light rail. They would also intersect with our commuter rail service or regional rail service, the MARC train at West Baltimore MARC. There is the potential of building a proposed East Baltimore MARC station as well, that this line would terminate on the east end. And then depending on the alternative, there are varying degrees of connectivity to the existing metro line.
Gotcha.
I'm curious, so you're in this planning phase. Is this sort of the second time this has been fully planned out? Before this project was revived, when it was canceled, had we already gone through all of this planning before?
Right. So we went through a lot of planning, previously. And the good news is we didn't have to start immediately all the way back from ground zero. So we have been able to use a lot of the good work that was done in the past. We're doing a supplemental environmental impact statement, which means we get to take the good bits and the things that really haven't changed from 10 years ago, reuse that. But, we do have to factor in some things that have changed. There are parts of the corridor where the right-of-way, the path that we thought we were going to take no longer is an option. So we're having to look at different alternatives there. And so that does, trigger more review and more study that we need to do this time around.
That was even my question, is what significant challenges have sort of come up since that previous period where we thought we were moving forward to this project to today, but that's a good one if the right-of-ways have changed.
So the right-of-way in certain locations is definitely a challenge. Obviously, this is not unique to Baltimore, but the cost to build these projects, right? There are many factors. I encourage people to look at the Transit Cost Project to learn more about the details there. But that's definitely a factor that we're going to have to consider, and getting really creative about the financing. So the other challenge, the city is dynamic and the city is changing. We actually gained population for the first time last year in a long time. And I think with this complete streets law and a city DOT and folks that are interested in how we transform the surface realm to be more human friendly, that does present, other positive things that we could, use this project to help implement.
Yeah, the cost is such a big one too. I mean, we talk about it a lot with Project Connect in Austin. Since COVID, I think all of the costs were estimated to go up by 60% across the board. So I'm sure you're facing very similar issues here.
Yes.
Can you just kind of give us like an overview of what the impact is going to be to Baltimore with the Red Line being completed. If you were, fast forwarding to this line being completely done, how do you see that sort of transforming the city behind us?
Yeah, you use one of my favorite words, transform. This project will be positively transforming for the city. One, as I mentioned, our existing rail lines that we have are sort of disconnected. The transfers aren't necessarily the most seamless. So this would go a long step in connecting those lines and creating more of a real system for Baltimore. As I mentioned, that east-west corridor, there are many bus routes today that run in the corridor or parallel to it, some of which are, in certain cases, almost overcrowded. So this really helps us, build that capacity. The other thing is that it's more than just a transit project, right? It is a community revitalization tool. It is an economic development driver, right? We're estimating that the total return on investment could be as much as $19 billion. And that includes, not only the jobs, the temporary jobs created during construction, but then there's, hundreds of full-time permanent jobs for operations and maintenance. And beyond that, then there's additional transit-oriented development opportunities along the entire 14 miles that we have the ability to, the Red Line can really serve as a catalyst for that. Baltimore City peaked population in the 1950s around almost 1 million people. Today, we're down to about 565,000. We need to regrow and repopulate, and certainly investing in high quality premium transit like the Red Line allows us to really think about upzoning, making sure that we build the density or allow the density to really work in our favor.
Absolutely. Something that I'm curious to get your take on. So recently we did an episode that was like 7 urban highways that Chris and I think that should be removed, and one of them that actually made our list was here in Baltimore, the Franklin Mulberry. Is it Frank? I'm getting it right.
Franklin
Mulberry. It's for those of you who haven't seen that episode, we'll make sure there's a link for you to check it out. But some of the alignments that you all are proposing with the Red Line would actually utilize some of the space, which made me happy here. I didn't notice that before we were chatting earlier today. Can you talk about, how this could utilize that corridor and the benefits that it could have in that part of town?
Yeah, and so for those who are unfamiliar, the Highway to Nowhere, 1.4 mile stretch of sunken highway that was originally intended to connect Interstate 70 to 95 and going across, all of Baltimore, including our beautiful inner harbor. They would have ran the highway right, on the waterfront.
I'm glad they did not do that.
Yes, but unfortunately, the section that did get built, majority Black, thriving neighborhood in West Baltimore, my great-grandmother was actually displaced for the construction of this highway, so I have a personal connection. We are approaching this with great sensitivity, right? We are talking about neighborhoods that have had many promises made in the past and promises not kept. There's been a lot of disinvestment. There is some mistrust of government agencies, and so we want to be real about that. And be sensitive to how we engage with that community. And we've been doing a lot of targeted and specialized outreach in West Baltimore. So this highway, because it has put such a scar and really a gash in the city, really disconnecting those communities, the Red Line has the opportunity to help, in part, begin to rectify some of that harm by, one, putting in access to opportunity in other parts of the city and utilizing parts of that corridor to help, make that space more usable. So today there's a median that was always intended actually for the east-west line of the Baltimore Metro. And so one of our alternatives would use that median in the middle of the highway. We're also looking at alternatives that would run on the surface level on Franklin and Mulberry. And so there's different trade-offs, right? On one hand, on the surface level, we don't have to have vertical circulation with elevators and stairs. On the other hand, we have to cross a lot more intersections, which could potentially slow down the service. So if we go in that median, we don't have to deal with the cross streets to run, faster, more reliable service. We're also, working in coordination with Baltimore City DOT. We hope, win a Reconnecting Communities grant where we're beginning to look at how we might treat that highway, whether it's filling in, capping over parts of it. And certainly we're going to be working with them to coordinate our plans and make sure that the Red Line can seamlessly integrate into that. But we still have a long way to go in terms of, fully, rectifying that harm if we ever really can. But we're glad that steps are beginning to work on that issue.
Well, and that also brings up a good point too. You are trying to reconnect these communities, sort of rectify, as you said, rectify the harm that's happened in the past. Are there any early stage plans for preventing further displacement if you build this in the area and then property values may go up or you see new developments go up? Do you know of any current plans now to help prevent that future displacement that could happen as well?
Yeah, certainly that's something that's top of mind for us. We've seen that happen in our close neighbor down the road in DC and in many other cities when these type of investments come in. We're still a little early in our planning process, but certainly it is something that's front of mind that we want to make sure that we, as the transit agency, whatever role we can play, partnering with the city, with the DOT, Department of Housing, Department of Planning, to really think about even the state, what options are there. Luckily, we have a lot of lessons learned that we can look to from around the country of programs. I know in Austin, right, there is sort of anti-displacement funding that came with the referendum.
Yep.
So there are a lot of different things that certainly we're going to be looking into because we know that that is going to be a potential issue that we want to tackle.
Yeah, good to hear that.
No, and yeah, there is such a so many cities are doing a really good job with that now, and it's balancing a mix of making sure that folks who are in the area and want to stay there can make sure they get to stay there, while also utilizing space that might be not being used today or as a giant surface parking lot or something like that to build more housing, more affordable housing in areas where folks could walk to this potential new transit solution for folks.
And I'll add that the agency, the Maryland Transit Administration, and the Maryland Department of Transportation, we do have a serious commitment to really thinking about TOD in maybe a way that we weren't in the past. And a big part of that will definitely be a affordable housing component,
For sure.
particularly the West Baltimore station. There's a lot of opportunity with surface parking lots to reimagine that. And we'll begin that work with the community to really kind of work hand in hand to make sure we know what they want and need,
Right.
and try to tailor it best to meet those community needs while still allowing the people
Yeah.
to live in the neighborhood that are there
Yeah.
today and bring in some new residents as well.
For sure.
The last thing I was going to say is your position with MTA, being sort of communications director for Red Line, sounds like an awesome job that you get to really connect with people across the city in all these communities. Can you just speak to some of the highlights of that position and things that you really enjoy about being this communications director?
Yeah, and so I'm the deputy director of communications
Sorry,
and engagement.
Deputy
No,
director.
all good. No, it's all good.
But future director.
But yeah, no, it is awesome, and I love this stuff. Right, I'm a big transit nerd. I'm so passionate. I don't own a car. I live downtown, so. And Baltimore,
Rode his bike to the interview.
I rode my bike to the interview, and Baltimore, it's my hometown, so I'm deeply invested in this. I actually remember the 2002 rail plan. I was 14 years old back then. I'm now 37, and so it is an honor to be able to come back to my hometown and work on such a significant transformative project. It is an honor to be able to go around the community and meet people from all walks of life. I think what I love about this project is it truly touches every sort of socioeconomic demographic of the city, and all of our key entertainment business areas, hospitals, universities, everything in between. This line really is a good project that connects so much, and so. I really take it as a personal mission and a charge to do right by the public, and I love talking to people, learning their stories, hearing their concerns. And we take that information back and synthesize it and work with our teams to figure out how are we designing and implementing a project in a way that honors the people that live here, while also thinking about the future and the future Baltimore. Because we always like to say, we're not, this project will take a little while, but we're building it for future generations, even generations that aren't born yet.
Oh, that's awesome. The last thing that I want to bring up, we got a little bit of your story last night at the happy hour that you planned. Thank you again for that. But in your story, you talked about how you got into working with public transit, and it wasn't what you went to school for. It was just something you were really passionate about. Can you, kind of give a plug to people if they're passionate about public transit, but they're not necessarily formally trained? What can they do to be more involved and get into this world?
They can start their own podcast. Yeah, so I've had a really interesting career. I've been in transit almost 10 years, but I actually went to school for music education because I thought I wanted to be a high school band director and then run like a Big Ten, college marching band. But I've always been interested in cities and trains since I was a little kid. In fact, when I was 10 years old, I sent my first email to the CEO of the Maryland Transit Administration at that time, asking him, how can I get your job when I grow up? So yeah, at age 10, I was like, I want to be a transit CEO.
Did he respond?
He did respond.
Nice.
He responded. And the summary is, he said, hey, Jerome, even at the age of 10, it's not too early to begin thinking about a career in transit. You're going to want to learn about finance and operations and all the things that make systems work. But the biggest takeaway I got at the end of that email, he said, the most important thing, though, if you want to be a leader, is how you treat other people. That's what people are going to remember you for, and that's what's going to earn your respect, and people will want to follow you when they know how much you care about them and their interest. I would say to folks, I've been able to have a pretty great career in transit without having a background. The way I got into the field, I really used a lot of my transferable skills. As a musician, it's both a left brain and right brain activity. And music is a form of expression and communication. There are parts of music that can be inherently rigid and mathematical and very systematic. But there's also the expression and the flowing and the interpretation. Those are great skills that you can translate to many things in life. And so I really got in the door because I am a decent enough communicator, and I was a nerd about transit enough that I started as an entry-level community engagement coordinator back in Indianapolis at Indigo. And once I got into the field, though, I was a sponge. I was absorbing all the knowledge I could. I was watching lectures on YouTube. I was reading urban planning textbooks. I was volunteering at advocacy events. So I'd say for those of you who are interested, if your community has a local advocacy group, get plugged in. There are so many wonderful YouTube channels that exist and podcasts, right, that are talking about this subject matter where you can just learn a lot. There are many great books out there that you could read. And I would say, if your dream is to work in transit, you never know. Reach out to your local transit agency, your local city planning staff. More often than not, there are people out there that'd be willing to meet you for lunch or for coffee and just talk to you about their work in the field and maybe give you some pointers. The last thing I'll say is I shamelessly just reached out to people on LinkedIn, right? People that I found that were interesting. I would just shoot them a message. Sometimes they responded, sometimes they didn't. But keep trying because, you never know. You could meet one person who could end up changing your life for the better. And so I've been really fortunate just to have some great people in my life, some great mentors that help me navigate the field. And once again, I think it's the best decision I ever made to switch. Like I said, I love transit, I love cities. And for me, it's all about this personal mission to break down barriers and bring people together.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. With all that, seriously, thank you so much for taking the time and we've been in communication for a while, and you were like, oh, if you're ever in Baltimore, let me know. And so we reached out, and I'm glad we did. This was been a really great trip so far, and we're actually, I don't know what the order these will be coming out, but we're getting ready to go do Baltimore in a day using only public transit. It's getting a little hot out, so it'll be a long day for sure, but we're very excited to check out the system. So thank you very much for taking the time. We really appreciate it. For folks, if they want to learn more about the Red Line project and kind of stay in touch with how things are going, where can they find out more?
Yeah, I can find out more. Visit our website, redlinemaryland.com, or just Google search Baltimore Red Line, and that'll take you to our website. We're also at Redline Maryland on all forms of social media.
Awesome. If you have not liked this video already, please consider doing so. If you have questions about the project, I'm sure we can make sure we send some of them along to Jerome. Definitely leave those in the comments. If you want to support the show directly, the best ways you can do so are via our Patreon. You can check out the merch store, all that sort of stuff. If you don't mind joining us at the very end saying enjoy the rest of your Transit Tangents Tuesday, I will kind of wrap it up here. So thank you all so much for watching, and enjoy the rest of your Transit Tangents Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm saving that dough. Public transit's where it's at. Watch me go.